Hi there, and welcome back to Florida's Fourth Estate. We have a fascinating guest for you today, maybe a lightning rod of controversy in this area. I don't know, but I'm very interested to talk to her, Ginger.
Oh, we are so excited, Matt. I honestly didn't think she would sit down and talk to us, but she is. And we're talking about Dr. Abigail Disney. Her grandfather was Roy Disney, and her great uncle was Walt Disney. They built Disneyland and Disney World. Now, she doesn't have any control over the company. We want to be clear on that, but she has benefited greatly from it. And now she has a bone to pick with the way things are being done there. So she's made a documentary about it, a movie, and it will be premiering at the Enzian here in Orlando.
That's right, and this is something that either Orlando people love Disney or don't like Disney, and she has become a pretty controversial character in this. We're glad that you could join us for this podcast, though. Abigail Disney, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Do
With my
you
grandfather.
currently have any financial interests in the Disney company?
Yeah, of course. I own many, many shares, although nobody at that company owns enough shares to make a dent in it. But yeah, I benefit by that company for sure.
Okay, so before we go further into the conversation, we got a chance to do a screening of the film, the documentary. For those who do not know what it is about, can you give us a synopsis, and then we're going to do a deep dive into some of the things that you talk about?
Sure, sure. I grew up going with my grandfather, in through the cast member entrance to the park, and I remember the people who worked there with incredible affection. And there was a great deal of affection between my grandfather and them as well. And I saw the relationship change over the decades with management, and I saw the nature of the way workers were treated there, and frankly, everywhere else in America over the last 50 years. And I wanted to make a film about why it changed so dramatically, how, and what we can do about it.
Obviously, there are some big Disney fans in Orlando. Some people are basically obsessed with it. And when I've talked to some of them and asked them their impressions of you and your plight here, some of them seem to get a little angry from
Mm,
that side. I've heard
yeah.
some sort of demonization of you. So at this point, how do you feel about Disney? Do you hate Disney? Do you, because you've kind of become the anti-Disney in some circles?
I would say I probably love Disney more than any other super fan could possibly love Disney. It's in my DNA. It's down to my toes, and I can remember every detail and every nuance of both of those parks. I will tell you though that if you really, really, really love something, you have to see it truthfully, and you have to speak the truth about it. And it's not perfect. I wish it were. But I happen to think that if you're running the happiest place on earth, but people who work there can't really get food on the table, then there's a problem. And should I just let the thing that I love keep going on that way, or should I do my best to change that?
Yeah, and it seems like you're doing your best to make a difference and change that. The film, by the way, is called The American Dream and Other Fairy Tales, and it is the American dream. So many people spend their lifetime as a child dreaming of working for the company, right? And then they get there, and it's like anything else. It's like a relationship. You get into the relationship, and you're like, this is not the way I thought this was going to go, but I'm in love with it, and I'm going to see where it takes me. So, what do you tell people? Because one of the things that I took away from the film is that, okay, these people have worked for the company for so long, but they can't make a decent wage or even a decent living or make ends meet. Why do they stay?
They stay because Disney is something extraordinary. Disney isn't like any other company or any other place on the world, and it speaks to our deepest dreams and the love we have for community and family. It's a little transcendent. You gotta admit it. And so people stay because there's meaning there for them. And don't we all need meaning in our work lives? But what concerns me is that the company, the management, knows that about the people who work there, and in many ways that gives them the latitude to push down on wages, to be really rough around hours and things, other things like this. And it's being used against a lot of people.
I do want to say, so in recent years, Disney has made some attempts to try to better this relationship between them and their employees. They've gone up to $15 an hour. They have a deal where they will pay the tuition for many Disney cast members. What do you think about that? Is that enough? Is that not enough for you? Are we moving in the right direction?
We're moving in the right direction. There's no question. But two things. The tuition question is an interesting one because it gets thrown back at me as a great way to not have to pay people more. And the fact is, if you scrub the floors all day today, you should be paid for the work you did today. And if there's a company that wants to give you also tuition above that, that's great. But basically what you're saying is eventually I'll pay you more if you take this class. But it's not about the work you did today, right? And so that's not a way of helping people pay the bills. And that's what's important. I made an agreement with you to sell you basically my time, and in exchange for that, you have said you're going to pay me. And in this country, we want to believe that people who work full time and follow the rules and do what they can should at least make enough to pay the rent, to get from point A to point B without a problem, and to educate their children and feed everybody.
Yeah, and many of the points that you make in this movie, it's like from scene to scene, it's like an onion, something else is revealed. And we're also in the backyard of SeaWorld here in Orlando. And when Blackfish came out, that had a huge impact on the company's bottom line. Do you feel there is a possibility that your film will have that same impact, or what are you hoping?
Well, if you doubt my intentions, you should look at who's going to benefit by this film. I'm certainly not going to make any money on it, and if it hits the stock price, it's going to hurt me. So if you doubt me, I'm probably telling the truth because I have everything to lose by being right. Disney can make money and still be a visionary company, a company that supports the well being of their employees. Both of these things can coexist. Unfortunately, at this moment, in the way we run businesses in this country, we've come to believe that these things are mutually exclusive, that managements must always get workers for as little as they can possibly get workers. It's not necessary and it's not good for the company over the long term. The way my grandfather treated employees, yes, he had problems with unions. No, he was not a perfect employer, but he treated people with respect and dignity, and they came back year after year after year. That's why the company has the reputation that it has, that they continue to use to employ people, that reputation, but they've long since stopped treating people that well. So you can treat people well, you won't have as much turnover. It goes to your bottom line if you treat people well. And so this belief that management has to skimp and treat people like Ebenezer Scrooge all the way through the employment process is simply a bad idea. It's hurting the country and it's hurting individual people, and frankly in the long term it's hurting Disney.
And do you think if your grandfather and your great uncle were alive today to see how much CEOs making $65 million a year and to see employees having to sleep in their cars and go to food pantries, what do you think their reaction would be to that?
You know, I was very close to my grandfather. I was 12 when he died, but I was very close to him, and I think I understand the man that he was. I cannot imagine that he would rest his head on the pillow at night and sleep well, knowing with $66 million in the bank or $65 million that there were people who couldn't put food on the table who worked for him full time. So first of all, I think a CEO is like the captain of an ocean liner, right? And if the ocean liner is going along and it hits an iceberg, it's his obligation to stay there and make sure everybody gets on the lifeboats. So, if you're going to take I don't have a problem with your $65 million. I really don't. Bless you. You're welcome to it. But don't take it until everybody's fed. I really think that, like, the way that we have separated in our imaginations what happens for the CEO and what happens to the employees is a terrible, terrible violation of the nature of equity. We're all just people. And as my grandfather used to say, when he would come into the park and pick up a piece of garbage, it was always the first thing he did. He would say, "There, nobody is too good to pick up a piece of garbage." And I want everyone who works here to know that I believe that.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. And so you're seeing this growing up, but the thing that was instrumental in you creating this particular film is that you received an email from someone, right? Would had you not received that email, would you be doing this? Is this the person you really would you be finding a way to make it better for employees there, or would it be one of those lost opportunities had you not heard from this particular person who sent you an email?
I think I might have missed it. I think that it was a Facebook message, and I think I might have missed this. I have been for many years thinking that that company is, it's too big. It has nothing to do with, what can I possibly do, right? And by the way, if I try to do something there, I'm only just, look at me. I'm only going to look like a weirdo. I know that I look like a weirdo. I'm very aware of that. Only a weirdo would do what I'm doing. But if somebody comes to you as a human being and says, "I work full time and I live below the poverty line and I cannot feed my 4 children," are you really going to turn away from that? Are you really going to look the other way and say, "Well, that has nothing to do with me"? You know, the quote that I use at the beginning of the film is a Gwendolyn Brooks, brilliant, brilliant poet. Her line is, "We are each other's business." And we have to take out of business that the idea that none of us is each other's business. We need to restore humanity to our business consciousness.
I'm curious what repercussions you have seen from this. I would imagine your family is not super happy. You put some of them in the documentary, and they seem to be semi-supportive of your venture. So not just your family, but from Disney fans who are quite rabid in many cases. And also, like, do you still go to the parks? What would happen if you took yourself over to It's a Small World? Would people throw stuff? What would happen at this point?
I don't know. I really don't know. I haven't been to the park in a long time, not since I last visited the workers there. I don't know if anybody would recognize me. I really don't know.
Oh, they would
But
recognize you. I think we could say.
you think so?
I think so.
So maybe I'll get a turkey leg thrown at me. I don't know, but we'll see. I mean, you know, the thing about repercussions is, um, if you're doing the right thing, then you have to be willing to take them. And I have checked my gut again and again on this. I do not enjoy criticizing this company. I do not enjoy taking the grief that I take. Um, but every so often, in the middle of the night, when I'm lying there awake wondering why I'm doing this, I think about the fact that, you know, companies across this country rely on the presumption that what happens to their employees is irrelevant to their business plans. And that is simply not true. It's just not true. And we have lived now for decades on this assumption that if wealthy people do well, everybody benefits. And we know it's not true. How many times does it have to be demonstrated to us as untrue? So I just can't sit silently by and reap my dividends and all the growth in those shares and live as comfortably as I do and pretend that the people who work there are not an integral part of all my comforts. And therefore, I can't pretend that I'm not engaged with them in some important way.
Yeah, one of the things you say also in the documentary is that having the name Disney is like having a superpower you didn't ask for. So it seems like you are trying to use that superpower for good, not evil.
That's exactly right. You know, because like I can use my superpower to get a really nice table in a restaurant.
I bet.
I can use my superpower to make people take my phone call. And, you know, I'm talking to the senators and the Congress people all the time because they want to raise money for me. That, like, any name, but and any amount of money will get you those superpowers. But the two together are really quite something when you want to work them. If I don't work mine for good, what kind of
Yeah.
Disney princess am I?
That's a
You
good
talk
question.
about being in front of high-powered people. Every time you adjust your glasses, I look at your hand to see if you're wearing the ring, and I know you know which ring I'm talking about.
Oh, yes,
Do you
yes.
only wear that for special occasions?
I only wear that when I'm channeling my grandpa. I should have been channeling him now, honestly. I love that ring to death.
Are you going to say what the ring is, Ginger?
It's
Now
I'm
that
not
you
gonna
brought
Mickey.
it up?
It's Mickey, and my grandfather gave it to me when I was like maybe 5, 6 years old for Christmas one year, and it's pretty special.
That's
Okay,
so cool.
that wasn't the one that I was talking about though.
No, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, I forgot about that ring.
I didn't.
I think that's her power ring, and I don't think we can go
That's
into
a
it.
whole other
You
superpower
gotta
you wouldn't
watch the
understand.
documentary if you want to hear more
Every
about
time you
that ring.
adjust your glass, I'm like, I don't see the ring. I don't see the ring.
She's looking for.
I didn't. I really should be wearing it too.
Oh my gosh.
Like,
I
Ginger,
hope
way to take a
I'm
turn
sorry. No, no,
in the
no.
interview.
Okay, so taking another turn,
Yeah.
I was so excited we were going to get a chance to talk to you because I don't know of another opportunity we will have to ever speak to you. And this is as close to face as we will get. So I started just watching all these YouTube things these interviews that you've done. And one thing that struck me, especially when you talk about the Gwendolyn Brooks quote that we are each other's business, you talk about one of your heroines, I guess, and her name is Angelina Grimke. And
Yes.
when I started researching her, she's from Charleston, South Carolina, as am I. Can you
Yes.
tell us a little bit about why this woman resonates with you? Because I find that story so fascinating.
It's so important, that story, isn't it? It really changes you to know about her. She was born to one of the wealthiest plantation owning families in South Carolina, very famous family. She grew up obviously in enormous privilege in a slave owning family. She ran away from home for the first time when she was 12 because she saw her father beat one of the people that they had been buying and selling, and she couldn't bear it. She just couldn't bear it. She was dismissed as overly emotional, and she just had to grow up. If she matured, she would stop acting so emotionally. But of course, she was right. When she was in her 20s, she left her family. Her family disowned her. Her sister Sarah eventually joined her in the North, and they became very well known abolitionist speakers across, and they worked until slavery was abolished. So I think it's really important because I kind of study traders, because people call me a trader all the time. And when you think of traders, you think of Benedict Arnold, but other kinds of traders are the people who walk away from the privilege or question the comforts they were born into, and ask themselves, is there a higher loyalty? And I believe I have a loyalty higher than Disney, and that's to my fellow human beings.
Very, very interesting, and interesting that you draw parallels there. I can see that. I am curious. I know you talk a lot about the employees, and that is a big focus of yours because that has to do with a lot of your interaction. Disney has really been raising prices. Not only are they not paying their employees as much as you say they should, they're also charging a ton. I mean, when you go to the parks, the price has risen so exponentially over what people are making. A middle class family really can't afford to go to Disney anymore. How do you feel about that aspect? And from what we see, we cover them every day. I see them building multi-million-dollar neighborhoods right next to Disney that none of us could ever even dream of owning one of those homes, and special clubs inside of Disney that cost just crazy amounts of money. How do you feel about Disney's impact on just the regular person who doesn't even work there?
My heart really breaks that it's stopped being available, or accessible rather, for the majority of Americans now, because the experience of Disney is really in many ways the best, most beautiful American experience you could possibly have. And if Americans can't afford it, then we're all in trouble, really. Actually, I understand the pressures the company is under, and I believe that they're doing what business school tells them to do, right? But this is precisely the problem and why I made this film, because what business school thinks you should do isn't necessarily in line with what's best for people, humans. And really, that has to be the higher priority. Customers the longtime fans, the people who have season passes, especially, they have really sacrificed a lot to have those passes, to be there as often as they are, and their loyalty is less and less valuable to the company, and I think it's bad for the company over the long term. Um, and it's bad for America, honestly. And like I understand why prices have to go up, but profit margins don't. They don't have to rise. And so you really have to look at, why is the company doing what it's doing? Is there another way to ensure that they function as a company, that Wall Street doesn't punish them too hard for making decisions that they make, but not squeeze every single individual person who comes into that park as though they're the goose that's maybe got one last golden egg in it.
Yeah, it is so. I like to play this game. You don't know me, but I'm one of 15 kids, and
Oh,
so every every year when the prices go up for Disney, I always do the calculations. And so at
ouch.
this rate, it would take almost $2,000 for us to just get into the parks.
Yeah.
For one
And
day.
that's,
Is that
yeah,
one day?
That's one day. That's
Oh
one day.
my
That's per
God.
ticket.
holy cow.
So
That's incredible.
and
Well,
so
there are charts you can find on the internet that track cost of living with the price of a
yeah,
Disney
yeah,
admission. And
yeah.
it's really wacky. It makes no
Yeah.
sense.
Well, people save their entire lives for this one trip,
Yeah.
and if so, and that's why they do work hard to make sure that it is the best experience possible. But if one thing goes wrong, it's ruined for that whole family.
Well, and isn't that why the people who work there are so important? Because they really are the people who are, like, in a way,
Yep.
midwifing that incredible experience that a family has saved for years and years to have. They're so important
Mhm.
and valuable. And you heard in the film what Ralph describes himself as. He's a guy who comes in the middle of the night. You never meet him. He cleans the place, he scrubs it, leaves it sparkling, he gets all that gum off the sidewalks, and you walk into this immaculate place, and he says, "We're the ones who spread the pixie dust at night." That's how he sees himself. Like, how can you treat an employee like that
Hmm.
any less than beautifully?
Yeah, and he's struggling to feed his family. I do want to ask you one question that when you're kind of confronted with politicians, they say you're a communist or a
Yes.
socialist. Are you, in fact, a communist or a socialist?
Let's get it on the record.
Yeah, let's get it on the record
Well,
right now.
I am not now, nor have I ever been a communist, nor socialist for that matter. I really think that there's a distance between socialism and what we have now. And the distance is so vast that there are a lot of steps that we could take away from the cliff's edge where we stand, back towards some kind of humanized, moderated capitalism. And it would be a long way from socialism. And believe me, I have 4 children. I know how angry they are and how their generation sounds when they talk about business.
Yeah.
If we don't fix capitalism, we're going to get communism or socialism, whether we like it or not. So let's just fix the thing we have. And by the way, that's how I feel about Disney too. I don't want to destroy Disney. I don't want to ruin Disney. I love it more. I challenge you to try and tell me you love it more than I do. I criticize it because I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
I think that's surprising to a lot of people because I wasn't quite sure what to expect when we were going to speak with you, but I feel like people will be surprised to learn how much you actually love it and care about it and want it to just be its best, the best version of itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And wouldn't it be amazing if Disney chose to lead the way? If Disney chose, instead of to pay the minimum wage or to pay the least amount that they can get away with from a public relations standpoint, if they step forward into a living wage, which is a long way from a minimum wage in any state in this country, what would follow on from that? What would other businesses feel able to do were Disney to choose to lead?
That is a very fascinating question. I don't think we're going to see the answer to it, unfortunately, because you are battling quite a bit of corporate greed.
Yeah.
But I appreciate that you took the time to talk to us about it. If you would like to check out this documentary, it is at the Enzian Theater in Orlando. You can actually do a Q&A section. If you're listening to this later, I'm sorry, but September 16th, it'll be at the Enzian. 23rd in New York and other markets, and video on demand. She's doing a Q&A at 6:15 at the Enzian on Friday, September 16th. Thank you so much, Abigail Disney. We appreciate you stopping by.
It's been a pleasure. Good to see
What
you.
a pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.